How is everybody doing? Thank you for stopping by to visit the channel for this championship game preview. If you want to stay updated in the college football world, please hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you won't miss another video. Alright folks, I need to get this out the way. Alabama and Clemson, they're like that couple you see around town and everybody thinks they're dating each other. But when you see one of them and you ask them what the deal is, they respond, "Oh, that's my friend." Really? Yeah, that's cool, whatever you guys say. But look, Saban and Dabo are buddies. They need to go ahead and schedule a home and home early in the year, and then we have the potential of seeing this game twice a year. I don't ask for much, but I would like to see that happen. In any event, we got part 4 of this postseason rivalry. Congratulations to both fan bases. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started with the resumes of the two teams. So adding Oklahoma's win to Alabama's resume did a few things. One, it gave the Crimson Tide its 7th win over F+ top 25 teams. It boosted their average F+ and S&P opponents to 45th and 34th respectively, and it gives their average offensive S&P plus opponent to a top 25 ranking. In fact, it gives Alabama their 5th win against top 20 offensive S&P plus teams and their 10th win rated in the top 50 in that metric. However, it drops their overall defensive schedule to outside of the top 50 since Oklahoma finished their season at 89th. Still, it is not a bad schedule. It's crazy top heavy, and it had one opponent ranked 100 or worse, which just so happened to be their first game of the year versus Louisville. Missouri and Mississippi State shows up in this ranking comparison. Now, it can be noted that the Missouri game was one of the first of many games Tua Tagovailoa wasn't healthy. The Missouri rushing defense is a top 10 rush defense, which is 6 spots below Clemson. The Crimson Tide rushed for 184 yards on the ground with 1 rushing touchdown. When you remove sacks from the equation, they ran for 4.5 yards per carry with a 53% success rate running the football. Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, and Najee Harris all ran for over 50 yards, and the offensive line was responsible for 3.06 yards per carry, which is well over the national average of 2.44. Now for the passing defense, you can make the argument for using LSU since they have the same defensive rating as Mississippi State, but since the Bulldogs are 1 spot ahead at Clemson with a ratings difference of 1.4, this will have to do. Tua Tagovailoa had a pedestrian game throwing the football for 164 yards, but it can be noted he completed 67% of his passes with 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Despite his numbers, the Crimson Tide was still above the national average in passing success rate at 48%. The defense held Mississippi State's rushing attack to less than 100 yards rushing and a rushing success rate of 21%. The secondary had a stellar game against Drew Lock and the Missouri Tigers, holding the Mizzou passing attack to 142 yards on a 50% completion rate at 3.6 yards per attempt while forcing 2 picks. It can be noted Missouri was missing a few guys at wide receiver, but with the way Alabama was locked in after that debacle against Arkansas the week before, I'm not sure it would have mattered much in this game. Clemson's win over Notre Dame boosted their resume as well in 4 of the 5 categories except for their offensive schedule. It went down 2 spots. They have 5 wins against F+ top 50 competition, which tells me while they haven't played elite competition, they haven't played patsies either. When you compare the resumes between the two teams, the first thing that may pop in your head if you're a casual fan, Clemson didn't play anybody, they're overrated, blah blah blah. I'm here to tell you, you might want to get that line of thinking out of your head because this is a quality football team in my opinion. You can glean just as much from a team who is boat racing everybody on their schedule who is not as good, just as much as you get from a team who is struggling to beat crappy competition consistently and remain unbeaten. Now, Clemson hasn't struggled against crappy competition consistently this year for a full game. I know you're going to mention Syracuse, but you can't mention them because they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. Now, for a quarter or two, maybe they'll stumble out of the gate a little bit. But when it comes down to it, when they have food on their plate, they just don't play around with their food. They show up to eat. It's tough to find teams with similar rankings to Alabama these days, but at least we have an SEC team here with Texas A&M. The Aggies' rush defense is 18th in advanced metrics, and Alabama is 3rd. So this ranking is a bit of a stretch since the Crimson Tide is 15 spots better, but it is the best rush defense the Tigers faced this year. The passing defense, however, is a good sign if you're a Clemson fan, as Trevor Lawrence went nuts against Notre Dame's secondary for 327 yards at a 69% completion rate. I understand Notre Dame had Julian Love and Alohi Gilman get hurt early, but Clemson took advantage of the situation and they exploded in the second quarter like what good teams are supposed to do. Now, Clemson's horses on defense held the Pitt rushing attack to 4.7 yards per carry when you adjust for sacks. Darren Hall rushed for 86 yards at 6.1 yards per carry, and he was a lone bright spot for their rushing attack. Now, if there's one thing I can say about the Pitt Panthers, is that they were committed to the cause because they ran the football 48 times for 191 yards, mainly because they couldn't throw it to save their lives. Now, the advanced metrics for passing is hard to gauge because Georgia Tech was the highest ranked passing offense on their schedule. Now, I don't agree with this comparison because Georgia Tech's offensive philosophy, they only threw the ball 8 times in a game. The next best team to pull would be from NC State, and because since they're 16th in passing offense S&P+, now they did make Ryan Finley's life miserable in that game, it's kind of hard to pull from that metric, but Alabama is number 1 as well in passing offense. So now that we've gotten the resumes out of the way, let's take a look at the tail of the tape. Alabama still holds the number 1 ranking in both S&P and F+. Now, they dropped out of the top 10 in defensive S&P+ after their win over Oklahoma. Clemson is a second-ranked team in S&P+, so this is a true number 1 versus number 2 matchup as well. Clemson is the only team in the country with a top 10 ranking in both offensive and defensive S&P+ in this metric. Now, Vegas opened up as a 6.5-point favorite. Now, the line is down to 5.5. S&P likes the Crimson Tide to win by 1 point with a 52% win probability. We just might have a close game after all. I'm sure Alabama fans are used to seeing Crimson in this case, but when you look at the advanced metrics, this looks like this is going to be a stalemate. There are no advantages in the major categories one side has over the other. It's pretty exciting, isn't it? It's good against good. A healthy Tua and the Alabama offense versus that vaunted Clemson front. You have to dig really hard to try to find some advantages when Alabama has the ball in this one. The only thing I found is Alabama is number 1 in the country in creating big plays on blitz downs, and Clemson's defense is 71st in the country on blitz downs. We have seen Clemson's secondary struggle a bit against Kellen Mond from Texas A&M, and recently South Carolina's Jake Bentley, who went nuts for over 500 yards passing. Tagovailoa has an embarrassment of riches at his disposal, and you can make the argument he will be the best player on the field. Wide receiver Devontae Smith is getting healthy at the right time after his 104-yard performance on 6 catches against OU. That's good news for Tide fans as they haven't been operating at a Death Star level since the Tennessee game. However, this is a Clemson defense that doesn't give up a ton of explosive plays, so they will make Alabama earn every yard they get and not give up any cheap ones. The defensive line is nasty, even without Dexter Lawrence, who will miss the game, but Cleveland Farrell, Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant, Xavier Thomas, and Albert Huggins are more than capable to be disruptive and force Tua to get out of rhythm, with their defensive line being number 1 in the country in havoc rate. The Clemson cornerbacks are a decent unit, but the safety position can be a pain to deal with if you're Alabama. Isaiah Simmons is a 6'2", 230-pound freak who can cover in the slot, and he is their leader in tackles, and he's tied for first in first fumbles. Keep an eye out if he is matched up with Irv Smith flexed out wide. Linebackers Kendall Joseph and Trey Lamar are ultra aggressive at shooting through gaps and running down plays on the perimeter as well. Well, it looks like we finally got some color here, but it looks like it's still even. Clemson's offense has transformed from the option run-oriented offense they had last year to a more up-tempo offense who will still run the football with their running backs, but will throw over your head when you're sucked in. Freshman quarterback Trevor Lawrence has been sensational when he took over the reins of the offense. This kid is no ordinary freshman. He is 6'6", he's athletic to escape pressure, he has excellent footwork, he can make every throw you ask of him. He's not a fluke. He's the real deal. And when he is not slinging the football around, he is handing it off to Travis Etienne, who is a speedster who has put on some serious muscle in the offseason. He has over 1,500 yards rushing with 22 touchdowns, and he is averaging a ridiculous 8.3 yards per carry. The offensive line is capable of pushing the pile against Alabama's defensive line in this matchup. Etienne can run around tackles and can run through arm tackles, so it doesn't matter much to him. Lawrence's favorite passing target is T. Higgins, who is the team leader in touchdown receptions with 11, and freshman Justin Ross is second on the team with 8. Hunter Renfrow is currently on his 10th year on the team, and he is a sure target on third downs as well. Now, the Crimson Tide has taken a backseat to its offensive teammates, and while the Tide is number 1 in defensive success rate, there are some glaring concerns. First, they are 50th in defensive explosiveness, and when they are on first and goal, they are 124th in success rate. That's different from the previous teams they fielded in the past, but I am not sure if those past defenses face an overall offensive schedule ranked 24th in the country, along with having the pleasure of facing the number 1 and number 4 teams in offensive S&P in Oklahoma and Georgia. It can be noted those two teams are ranked behind Alabama's offense in offensive success rate at 2nd and 4th respectively, so they didn't face any scrubs during this stretch. The defense is headlined by Quinnen Williams, who has wrecked every single offensive game plan since week 1. This dude simply cannot be blocked one-on-one, and if Clemson attempts to try that, I only have one thing to say. May God be with that offensive lineman. If the Tigers get in obvious passing downs, they could be in some trouble here. Isaiah Buggs is a sack leader with 9.5, but the Tide could be without the services of Christian Miller, who is questionable with a hamstring injury and is second on the team in sacks. Linebacker Anthony Jennings looks to get reacquainted with Clemson's offense from last year's Sugar Bowl performance, as he was the most dominant player on the field in that game. For the keys of the game, it's simple. For Trevor Lawrence, go ye forth and channel your inner Deshaun Watson. I have said this time after time after time. The quarterbacks that give Alabama trouble is not a mobile quarterback, it is an accurate quarterback. He got his final exam this coming Monday, and he needs to bring his A game in this one. And for Alabama, they got to take what Clemson's defense gives them, which, in the same token, they got to give Tua some time to throw. Now, if there was an encouraging sign from last week's game, Tua was hitting his running backs out of the backfield as opposed to falling in love with the deep passing game in previous weeks. Clemson doesn't give up explosive plays often, so Alabama's patience will be tested here. The computer model likes Alabama to win the game by the score of 31-27. The Tigers' rush defense is their strongest unit, allowing 55% of their opponent yard per carry average and 82% of their opponent passing averages while scoring 149% above what their opponents allow. Alabama counters with allowing 70% of their opponent yard per carry average and 78% of their opponent passing average, while they score 170% above what their opponents allow. Now, if there's any other things to consider, both teams are not adept at punting the football, and Alabama, as crazy as it sounds, may have an edge in field goal kicking here. Joseph Bulovas is at 76%, and Clemson kicker Craig Hagel is at 66%, including a missed extra point in the Cotton Bowl. Now, as far as kick return efficiency goes, the Crimson Tide is first in the country in that metric, and Clemson is 12th in kickoff efficiency. So field position, as always, is going to play a major factor in this game. So we have the best season post rivalry in college football history. The first time two teams faced each other in a bowl game for 4 consecutive years. I do remember watching the first game in person in Glendale when Deshaun Watson went nuts against an Alabama defense that seemed to play about 12 guys on their defensive line. Derrick Henry had to work hard for his yards. He had the onside kick, Kenyon Drake's return, O.J. Howard went nuts. It was ridiculously insane. Then the following year in Tampa, when Watson and the Tigers ran 99 plays on an exhausted Crimson Tide defense to come out with a victory. Then you had last year's Sugar Bowl game. That game wasn't close, as Alabama went scorched earth on defense as they were finally healthy. There is no doubt we have two of the best teams in the country, and I don't expect this game to be a blowout. Clemson has all the motivation in the world, and I expect them to come out with their hair on fire, ready to go for this one. They've thought about this game for a full year, and they finally get their shot at Alabama. They have the horses on defense to take the game over, and a freshman quarterback that hasn't made any mistakes yet. This time around, Alabama has a transcendent player at the quarterback spot and an offense that can pose problems from anywhere on the field. Clemson's defense has faced 3 teams in the top 25 in offensive success rate all season long, while Alabama faced 6, including the last 2 teams in the top 5. Clemson's offense faced 2 teams ranked in the top 25 in defensive success rate, while the Crimson Tide faced 5, including 3 in the top 10 as well. In a hard-fought game, Trevor Lawrence will play well, and the Clemson defense will play hard and compete for 60 minutes. But I am going to pick Alabama in this one since they're going to have the best player on the field, and Clemson fans will finally see what Alabama fans had to go through in the first 2 championship games, going up against an accurate quarterback who can make throws versus a tough defense. And that is all I got for this championship game preview. Let me know what your thoughts are on the game in the comment section below. Give me your score prediction and also tell me why your respective team is going to win the game. I hope you enjoyed the video. All I ask is that you give the video a like, and if you love college football as much as I do, hit that subscribe button. And that's the last preview of the season. In the off season, I will keep this channel updated with some highlights. Thank you all for watching this year. Good Lord willing, I will see you next August. Take care and God bless.